In 50 AD, a Roman bakery slave named Marcus hid coins in a clay jar that his master technically owned, yet the law still let him keep it. Every night after the ovens cooled, he sold spiced honey bread to hungry street crowds and dropped each copper into that jar. His master knew about the fund, called a Peculium, and had already calculated exactly what Marcus was worth on the open market. What neither of them had settled yet was whether Marcus would ever actually reach that number before his master changed his mind. The Peculium was one of Rome's strangest legal arrangements. A slave could accumulate personal savings that everyone acknowledged as his, yet the law classified every coin as his master's property. It gave Marcus something real to work toward, and it could be dissolved on a single bad morning with no recourse and no appeal. Can you hold hope in a jar you don't legally own? Marcus had no choice but to try, because the alternative was dying in that bakery without ever knowing what freedom tasted like. The Roman legal system hadn't designed the Peculium as an act of generosity. Masters permitted it because a slave who believed he was buying himself worked harder and caused fewer problems. Marcus understood the game, and he played it anyway, because the only move worse than playing was standing still. So when the last customer of the day disappeared into the dark streets, Marcus wasn't finished, he was just getting started. The bakery never truly slept, and Marcus had learned to use that against it. While his master's legitimate loaves cooled on racks upstairs, Marcus worked the night shift alone, and that solitude was the most valuable thing he owned. He'd negotiated a small cut of the after-hours sales, legal, documented, unremarkable. But what he sold in those hours was anything but ordinary. His recipe was a dense, palm-sized round of bread soaked in local honey and dusted with cumin and coriander, warm enough that the smell carried half a street. Night market workers, lamp oil sellers, and dock hands coming off the Tiber would follow that smell like a rope pulled taut. Each round sold for 2 asses, the smallest Roman coin, and Marcus kept one in every 4. That's a margin so thin you could read through it, yet every 4th coin dropped into a clay jar he'd buried beneath the flour sacks. The jar was invisible to his master, perfectly legal under Roman law, and growing, 1 coin at a time. Gaius wasn't the kind of master who beat his slaves for sport. He was the kind who tracked every coin they generated. He knew about the night sales, knew about the spiced honey bread, and he had already done the math on what Marcus was worth. In Rome, a skilled baker in his prime could fetch 2,000 sesterces at auction, sometimes more if the buyer was desperate. Gaius set Marcus's manumission price at exactly that, 2,000 sesterces, not a coin less. That number wasn't cruelty, it was a business decision, the same logic he applied to every asset on his ledger. He even told Marcus the figure directly, because a slave who knows his price works harder than one who doesn't. 2,000 sesterces was roughly what a free laborer earned across 4 grinding years of full-time work. Marcus was making a fraction of that, in copper, 1 night at a time. The jar under his sleeping mat held maybe 30 coins, and the number he needed was 2,000. Every coin Marcus dropped into that clay jar sounded like progress, but the jar filled agonizingly slow. 3 years of night shifts, 3 years of measuring his freedom in copper fractions nobody else could see. He kept a mental ledger, each loaf sold after dark, each extra pinch of cinnamon that made a customer come back, tallying a sum his master didn't know existed. Most nights, the jar felt less like a savings fund and more like proof that the distance between him and freedom was almost insulting. Then the harvest of 52 AD turned bad, and foot traffic through the bakery district dropped by half almost overnight. Weeks passed where Marcus added nothing, where the jar just sat there, mocking the schedule he'd set inside his own head. You can plan for discipline, but you can't plan for a drought that empties the streets before you've even opened the oven. He started doing the math differently, not how long until he had enough, but how long until he ran out of time. That shift in thinking is what pushed him toward a decision that would either double his savings or end everything he'd built. Marcus could only be in one place at a time, and that was starting to cost him. The night market crowd near the Tiber had grown, and a single tray of spiced honey bread sold out before the second hour of darkness. He needed someone to run a second corner while he held the first, which meant letting another person see the jar. Drusus worked the flour sacks on the morning shift, a broad-shouldered man from Carthage who'd watched Marcus count coins with the careful eyes of someone doing the same math. They struck no written agreement. Marcus couldn't sign one, and Drusus knew it, so the whole arrangement rested on a handshake between two men who owned nothing. For 3 weeks it worked, and the jar grew heavier than it ever had alone. Then one evening, Gaius stopped Drusus at the millhouse gate and asked plainly where he'd been spending his nights. Drusus had one breath to decide whether Marcus's freedom fund was worth protecting or worth trading. Marcus didn't walk into that room with confidence. He walked in with a clay jar and a carefully rehearsed number. He set the jar on Gaius's ledger table, and the coins inside made a sound that every Roman master recognized immediately. Roman law gave Gaius the absolute right to refuse, to raise the price, or to pocket the Peculium and say nothing more about it. But Marcus had spent 3 years making himself indispensable. The night shift revenue, the spiced honey bread regulars, the loyal customers who came back because of him. Gaius was a businessman, and Marcus had quietly made the math work in his own favor. The Peculium wasn't just savings, it was a negotiating argument, denominated in bronze and silver. Marcus named his figure first, the full assessed value of his own body, calculated by Roman custom and spoken aloud without flinching. Gaius looked at the jar, then at Marcus, then at the ledger that showed exactly what the night shift had earned him. Every second of silence in that room carried the full weight of what freedom actually cost. The answer could go any direction, and Marcus had no power left to push it. The wax tablet was signed, the words spoken, and Marcus was legally free. But freedom in Rome came with a very specific asterisk. He was now a libertus, a freedman, which meant he owed Gaius formal obligations called opere, days of labor and loyalty that could stretch for years. The document changed his legal category, but it didn't conjure property, savings, or a roof that belonged to him. Every coin in his clay jar had gone toward the price of himself, which meant he was starting the first morning of his freedom with almost nothing in his hands. He couldn't simply walk away from Gaius either. Roman law made his former master his official patron, a relationship with real teeth and real consequences for breaking it. What Marcus had gained was the right to contract, to sue, to own, and to trade in his own name. That wasn't nothing in a city where millions never touched those rights, but it wasn't a clean break. He spent that first free morning doing what any Roman entrepreneur would do. Walking the streets near the Forum, measuring doorways, calculating rent. The Thermopolium Marcus opened on the Via Sacra was not grand, but it was entirely his. He had started with a clay jar, a night shift, and a handful of coins that most Romans would have dropped without noticing. That jar became a Peculium. The Peculium became a document, and the document became walls, a counter, and a fire that he lit himself every morning. Thousands of enslaved Romans walked a version of this same road. Some made it, most never did, and the system never promised anyone a way out. What Marcus had was not luck exactly, but a specific and relentless refusal to let the small thing stay small. He ground the grain, he spiced the honey bread, he negotiated across a table where all the power sat on the other side. And then, one morning, he set a new clay jar on the shelf above the counter, and the coins dropping into it were legally, undeniably his.